In its heyday, it was the ultimate maximum security prison. Located on a lonely island in the middle of San Francisco Bay, Alcatraz, aka The Rock, had held captives since the Civil War. In 1934, Alcatraz was refortified into the world's most secure prison. Some of its inmates included Al Capone, George Machine Gun Kelly, and also criminals who had a history of escapes, such as the infamous Birdman of Alcatraz. In the 1930s, the prison was already a forbidding place, surrounded by the cold, rough waters of the Pacific. The redesign included tougher iron bars, a series of positioned guard towers, and strict rules, which included 12 checks a day for the prisoners. Escape seemed near impossible. From 1934 until its closure in 1963, 36 men tried 14 separate attempts to escape. Nearly all were caught or didn't survive the attempt. Because Alcatraz cost more to operate than other prisons, and because 50 years of saltwater saturation had severely eroded the buildings, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy ordered the facility to be closed on the 21st of March, 1963. Frank Morris was born on the 1st of September 1926 in Washington, D.C. and was orphaned at the age of 11. He spent the rest of his childhood in foster homes. Convicted of his first criminal offence at 13, and by his late teens, he had been arrested for crimes ranging from narcotics possession to armed robbery. He spent most of his early years in jail serving lunch to prisoners. Later, he was arrested for grand larceny in Miami Beach, car theft, and armed robbery. He reportedly ranked in the top 2% of the general population in intelligence, as measured by IQ testing, which came out to 133. He served time in Florida and Georgia, then escaped from the Louisiana State Penitentiary while serving 10 years for bank robbery. He was recaptured a year later while committing a burglary and sent to Alcatraz on the 20th of January 1960 as inmate number AZ-1441. John was born on the 2nd of May 1930 and Clarence was born on the 11th of May 1931, and they were born into a family of 14 children in Donnellsville, Georgia. Their parents, George Robert Anglin and Rachel Van Miller Anglin, were seasonal farm workers in the early 1940s. They moved their family to Ruskin, Florida, where the truck farms and potato fields provided a more reliable source of income. Each June they migrated north as far as Michigan to pick cherries. Clarence and John were reportedly inseparable as teens. They became skilled swimmers and amazed their siblings by their swimming in the frigid waters of Lake Michigan as ice still floated on its surface. Clarence was first caught breaking into a service station when he was 14 years old. The brothers began robbing banks and other establishments as a team in the early 1950s, usually tagged in businesses that were closed to ensure that no one got injured. They claimed that they only used a weapon only once during a bank heist, which was a toy gun. On the 17th of January 1958, brothers John, Clarence and Alfred Anglin robbed the Bank of Columbia in Columbia, Alabama. They all received a 35-year sentence, which they served at Florida State Prison, Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary, and then Atlanta Penitentiary. After repeated attempts to escape from the Atlanta facility, John and Clarence were transferred to Alcatraz. John arrived on the 24th of October 1960 as inmate AZ-1476 and Clarence on the 16th of January 1961 as inmate AZ-1485. Alan West was born on the 25th of March 1929 and was born in New York City. He was arrested over 20 times throughout his lifetime. He was imprisoned for car theft in 1955, first at Atlanta Penitentiary and then Florida State Prison. After an escape attempt from the Florida facility, he was transferred to Alcatraz in 1957 and became inmate AZ-1335. The 4 inmates all knew each other from previous incarcerations in Florida and Georgia. When they were assigned adjacent cells in December 1961, they began formulating an escape plan under the leadership of Morris. Over the subsequent 6 months, they widened the ventilation ducts beneath their sinks using discarded saw blades found on the prison grounds, metal spoons from the mess hall, and an electric drill improvised from a motor of a vacuum cleaner. The men concealed their work with painted cardboard and masked the noise with Morris's accordion at music hour. Once the holes were wide enough to pass through, the men accessed the unguarded utility corridor directly behind their cells tier and climbed to the vacant top of the cell block, where they set up a clandestine workshop. Here, using over 50 raincoats, among other stolen and donated materials, they constructed life preservers based on the design that Morris found in the March 1962 issue of Popular Mechanics with the article, "Your Life Preserver, How Will It Behave If You Need It?" Morris found other ideas in magazines, resin to make a lampshade in the November 1960 issue of Popular Mechanics, and signposts of water safety about channel buoys indicating course and navigation hazards in the May 21st, 1962 issue of Sports Illustrated. They also assembled a 6 by 14-foot rubber raft, the seams carefully stitched by hand and sealed with liquid plastic available in the shops and heat from nearby steam pipes. Paddles were improvised from plywood and screws. Finally, they climbed a ventilation shaft to the roof and removed the rivets holding a large fan in place. The men concealed their absence whilst working outside their cells, and after the escape itself by sculpting dummy heads from handmade papier-mâché-like mixture of soap, toothpaste and concrete dust, and toilet paper, and giving them a realistic appearance with paint from the maintenance shop and hair from the barber shop floor. With towels and clothing piled under the blankets in their bunks and the dummy heads positioned on the pillows, they appeared to be sleeping. On the night of the 11th of June 1962, with all preparations in place, the men initiated their plan. West discovered that the cement he had used to reinforce the crumbling concrete around his vent had hardened, narrowing the opening and fixing the grill in place. By the time he managed to remove the grill and re-widen the hole, the others had left without him. He returned to his cell and went to sleep. From the service corridor, Morris and the Anglins climbed the ventilation shaft to the roof. Guards heard a loud crash as they broke out of the shaft, but nothing further was heard, and the source of the noise was never investigated. Hauling the gear with them, they descended 50 feet to the ground by sliding down a kitchen vent pipe and climbed 2 12-foot barbed wire perimeter fences. At the northeast shoreline near the power plant, a blind spot in the prison's network of searchlights and gun towers, they inflated their raft with a cortina stolen from another inmate and modified to serve as a bellows. At some time after 10 p.m, investigators estimated they boarded the raft, launched it and departed towards their objective, Angel Island, 2 miles to the north. The escape was not discovered until the morning of the 12th of June due to the successful dummy head ruse. Multiple military and law enforcement agencies conducted an extensive air, sea and land search over the 10 days. On the 14th of June, a Coast Guard cutter picked up a paddle floating about 200 yards off the southern shore of Angel Island. On the same day and in the same general location, workers on another boat found a wallet wrapped in plastic, complete with names, addresses and photos of the Anglins' friends and relatives. On the 21st of June, shreds of a raincoat material believed to be remnants of the raft were found on a beach not far from the Golden Gate Bridge. The following day, a prison boat picked up a deflated life jacket made from the same material 50 yards off Alcatraz Island. According to the final FBI report, no other evidence was found. The FBI agents summarized early on that the men had drowned. They cited that the fact that the individuals' personal effects were the only belongings they had, and the men would have drowned before leaving them behind. However, no human remains were found at the time. On the 17th of July, a Norwegian ship spotted a body floating in the ocean 15 nautical miles from the Golden Gate Bridge. The ship did not retrieve the body and did not report the sighting until October. San Francisco County Coroner Henry Turkle cast doubt on the speculation that it could have been one of the escapees, emphasizing that the improbability of a body would still be floating on the surface of the ocean after more than a month. Instead, Turkle proposed that the corpse may have been that of Cecil Philip Herman, a 34-year-old unemployed baker who had jumped from the Golden Gate Bridge 5 days earlier. Several coroners from neighbouring countries challenged Turkle's opinion, stating that it was possible the remains belonged to the escapees. FBI investigators announced their official position that, while it was theoretically possible for the men to have reached Angel Island, the odds of them having survived the turbulent currents and frigid waters of the bay were negligible. According to the final FBI report, West said that they had planned to steal clothes and a car upon reaching land, but no such thefts were reported in the immediate area. West was the only conspirator not to participate in the actual escape. He fully cooperated with the investigation and was therefore not charged for his role. West was transferred to McNeil Island, Washington after Alcatraz was deactivated in 1963, and later back to Atlanta Penitentiary. After serving his sentence, followed by 2 additional sentences in Georgia and Florida, he was released in 1967, only to be arrested again in Florida the following year on charges of grand larceny. At Florida State Prison, he fatally stabbed another inmate in October 1972 in what could have been a racist hate crime. He was serving multiple sentences, including life imprisonment on the murder conviction, and then he died of acute peritonitis in 1978. The FBI closed its file on the 31st of December 1979 after a 17-year investigation. Their official finding was that the prisoners most likely drowned in the cold waters of the bay whilst attempting to reach Angel Island. They cited the remnants found of the raft as well as the personal effects of the men as evidence that the raft broke up and sank at some point, and the 3 convicts succumbed to hypothermia with their bodies swept out to sea by rapid currents of the San Francisco Bay. The FBI did hand their evidence over to the U.S. Marshal Service, whose investigation remains open. As Deputy U.S. Marshal Michael Dyke told NPR, "There's an active warrant and the Marshal's Service doesn't give up looking for people." In 2009, Dyke said that they were still receiving leads on a regular basis. The warrant will expire in 2030 when all of the missing men would be at least 100 years old. On the 16th of December 1962, Alcatraz inmate John Paul Scott made water wings from inflated rubber gloves and swam a distance of 2.7 nautical miles from Alcatraz to Fort Point, at the southern end of the Golden Gate Bridge. He was found there by teenagers suffering from hypothermia and exhaustion. After recovering in Letterman Army Hospital, he was immediately returned to Alcatraz. Scott is the only documented case of an Alcatraz inmate reaching the shore by swimming. Today, a multitude of athletes swim the same Alcatraz to Fort Point route as part of 2 annual triathlon events. Of the 36 inmates who staged 14 escape attempts over the 29 years that Alcatraz served as a federal penitentiary, 23 were recaptured, 6 were shot and killed, 2 drowned, and 5, Morris, the Anglins, and Theodore Cole and Ralph Rowe, are listed as missing and presumed drowned. In January 1965, the FBI investigated a rumour that Clarence Anglin was living in Brazil. Agents were dispatched to South America but found no direct evidence that he was there. A man called the Bureau in 1967, claiming to have been Morris's classmate and to have known him for 30 years. He said that he had bumped into him in Maryland and described him as having a small beard and moustache, but refused to give further details. Family members of the Anglin brothers occasionally received postcards and messages over the years. Most were unsigned, one was signed Jerry and another Jerry and Joe. The family also produced a Christmas card purportedly received in the family mailbox in 1962, saying, "To Mother from John, Merry Christmas." Another of the Anglins' 11 brothers, Robert, also said that sometimes the phone would ring and all that could be heard was breathing on the other end. Robert said, "I suppose that could have been pranks, but maybe it was my brothers." The mothers of the Anglin brothers received flowers anonymously every Mother's Day until her death in 1973, and 2 very tall, unusual women in heavy makeup were reported to have attended her funeral. Federal officials say that in the mid to late 1960s and into the 1970s there were 6 or 7 sightings reported of the Anglin brothers, all in North Florida or Georgia. Robert said that in 1989, when the father of the Anglin brothers died, two strangers in beards showed up at the funeral home. According to Robert, they stood in front of the casket looking at the body a few minutes. They wept. Then they walked out. In 1989, a woman who identified herself only as Kathy called Unsolved Mysteries Tipline to report that a photo of Clarence Anglin matched the description of a man who lived on a farm near Marianna, Georgia. Another woman who recognised the photo of Clarence Anglin said that he lived near Marianna. She correctly identified his eye colour, height and other physical features. Another witness claimed that a sketch of Frank Morris bore a striking resemblance to a man she had seen in the same area. A day after the escape, a man claiming to be John Anglin called a lawyer, Eugenia McEwen, in San Francisco to arrange a meeting with the U.S. Marshal's office. When McEwen refused, the caller terminated the phone call. Chechi, a San Francisco police officer, said that at 1 a.m. on the morning of the 12th of June he saw an illegal boat in the bay near Alcatraz. A few minutes later, the boat left, heading under the Golden Gate Bridge. This led to speculation that the prisoners might have enlisted outside Confederates to pick them up. The FBI dismissed Chechi's account. In 1993, a former Alcatraz inmate named Thomas Kent had told the television program America's Most Wanted that he had helped plan the escape and claimed to have provided significant new leads to investigators. He said that Clarence Anglin's girlfriend had agreed to meet the men on shore and drive them to Mexico. He declined to participate in the actual escape, he said, because he could not swim. Officials were skeptical of Kent's account because he had been paid $2,000 for the interview. The 2003 Mythbusters episode on the Discovery Channel tested the feasibility of an escape from the island aboard a raft constructed with the same materials and tools available to the inmates, and they concluded that it was possible. A 2011 documentary on the National Geographic Channel entitled Vanished from Alcatraz reported the contrary to the official FBI report. A raft was discovered on Angel Island on the 12th of June 1962, the day after the escape, with footprints leading away from it. Furthermore, in 1995, a blue Chevrolet California license plate KPB076 was reported stolen in Marin County the same day, a claim corroborated by contemptuous stories in the Humboldt Times and the San Francisco Examiner. The following day, a motorist in Stockton, California, 80 miles east of San Francisco, reported to the California Highway Patrol that he had been forced off the road by 3 men in a blue Chevrolet. The same year, an 89-year-old man named Bud Morris, who claimed he was a cousin of Frank Morris, said that on 8 or 9 occasions prior to the escape he delivered envelopes of money to the Alcatraz guards, presumably as bribes. He further claimed to have met his cousin face-to-face in a San Diego park shortly after the escape. His daughter, who was 8 or 9 years old at the time, said that she was present at the meeting with Dad's friend, Frank, but had no idea about the escape. A 2014 study of the ocean currents by scientists at Delft University concluded that if the prisoners left Alcatraz at 11:30 p.m. on the 11th of June that they could have made it to Horseshoe Bay, just north of the Golden Gate Bridge, and that any debris would have floated in the direction of Angel Island consistent where the paddle and belongings were actually found. They said that tides and currents were such that their chances of survival were slim. A 2015 History Channel documentary entitled Alcatraz: Search for the Truth presented further circumstantial evidence gathered over the years by the Anglin family. Kenneth and David Widener displayed Christmas cards containing the Anglin's handwriting and allegedly received by family members for 3 years after the escape. While the handwriting was verified as the Anglins, none of the envelopes contained a postmarked stamp, so experts could not determine when they had been delivered. The family cited a story from family friend Fred Brizzi, who grew up with the brothers and claimed to have recognised them in Rio de Janeiro in 1975. They produced photographs purportedly taken by Brizzi, including one of the 2 men, who according to Brizzi were John and Clarence Anglin, standing next to a large termite mound. Other photos showed a Brazilian farm that Brizzi claimed was owned by the men. Forensic experts working for the family confirmed that the photos were taken in 1975, asserted that the two men were more likely the Anglins, although the age and condition of the photo and the fact that both men were wearing sunglasses hindered efforts to make a definitive determination. Brizzy also presented an alternative escape theory. Rather than use the raft to cross the bay, he said they paddled around the island to the boat dock, where they attached an electrical cord which was reported missing from the dock on the night of the escape, to the rudder of a prison ferry and departed the island, and they were towed behind it to the mainland. Art Roderick, a retired deputy US Marshal who had once headed the investigation and later worked with the Anglin family, called Brizzy's photograph of the two men absolutely the best actionable lead we've had, but added, it could still be a nice story which isn't true, or the photograph could be a misdirection aimed at steering the investigation away from the Anglins' actual whereabouts. Michael Dyke, the last deputy marshal assigned to the case, said Brizzy was a drug smuggler and a conman, and was suspicious of his account. Brizzy's widow said that she never heard him mention seeing the Anglin brothers in Rio, and that he was a conman and was prone to making up stories. An expert working for the US Marshal Service did not believe the photograph was legitimate. Dyke said measurements of the physical characteristics of the Anglin brothers indicate they were not the men in the Brazil photo, but he acknowledged the difficulty in making a definitive determination and ruling it out as a valid lead. In January 2020, an Irish creative agency and AI specialists at Identiv used facial recognition techniques to conclude that the men in the photo were John and Clarence Anglin. Robert Anglin reportedly told family members before his death in 2010 that he had been in contact with John and Clarence from 1963 until approximately 1987. Surviving family members who said that they heard nothing since Robert lost contact with the brothers in 1987 announced plans to travel to Brazil to conduct a personal search, but Roderick cautioned that they could be arrested by Brazilian authorities because the Alcatraz escape remains an open Interpol case. In a 2019 episode of the series Mission Declassified, the investigative journalist Christoph Putzel corroborated much of the information released by the FBI and other sources, including the raft found on Angel Island. He quoted various reports mentioning a blue Chevrolet of the same description as the one stolen after the escape spotted in Oklahoma, Indiana, Ohio, and South Carolina, where 3 months after the escape, 3 men matching the escapee's description attempted to acquire a residence in the woods. The Anglins and Morris were reportedly aided by mobsters Mickey Cohen and Whitey Bulger, who arranged for a boat to collect them from the bay. Their story inspired the 1979 film Escape from Alcatraz. Clint Eastwood played bank robber Morris, who had an IQ of 133, putting him in the smartest 2% of the population. It was not clear what happened to Morris. It was leaked in 2018 that US authorities had been sitting on a letter reportedly written by John Anglin 5 years earlier. The note, sent to police in San Francisco in 2013, said, "My name is John Anglin. I escaped from Alcatraz in June 1962 with my brother Clarence and Frank Morris. I'm 83 years old and in bad shape. I have cancer. Yes, we all made it that night, but barely. Frank passed away in October 2005. His grave is in Alexandria under another name. My brother died in 2011. If you announce on TV that I will be promised first to go back to jail for no more than a year and get medical attention, I will write back and let you know exactly where I am. This is no joke. This is for real and honest truth."